So what causes chimney leaks is a question we get, and it depends on what type of fireplace you have. Now, if you have a masonry unit, so all brick, let's say, a lot of times those are built, long ago, 40, 50 years ago, and you move into that home. Well, over time, when you're burning in that fireplace, the byproduct of a fire is called creosote. We know it sometimes as soot. I mean, creosote's a little different than soot. Soot is more of the ashy consistency, where creosote actually sticks to the walls or the sides of your fireplace. When you have creosote buildup, if it is not cleaned frequently, masonry units soak in water because brick is porous, so it soaks up water. And if the sun does not come out to draw that water back out, then what will happen is that water stays inside that chimney. Now, when that water mixes with creosote, it becomes acidic. That acid will eat away at the silica in the mortar. And when that happens, it starts to revert back to its first form, which is sand. So you start to get holes in your mortar joints. So then water, not only has it already been soaking into the brick, now it has a small tiny hole where the water can go directly into, and then you have more water getting in. Now at the top of your masonry unit, you have what is known as your crown. It's usually made out of concrete, or what they used to make them out of back in the day was a lot of times concrete. That concrete over time, because it gets cold and hot, it will contract and expand, and it will crack. And then you start to get cracks in your crown. So that's another area where water can get into. Now, if you look at your actual fireplace opening in your home, and sometimes, especially if it's masonry, you'll see it looks white on the walls. It has this white, almost looks chalky, kind of powdery. It's not powder, but it looks similar to that. But what that is something that you call effervescence. And effervescence happens when that chimney has been holding water for quite some time. It takes 7 years for those white marks to show up on the walls of your fireplace. So that means that for the at least past 7 years, there's been water in that chimney that's been holding. That white mark is actually sodium left over from water. The minerals and things that are in that water, that's what's left over. So a lot of times with masonry chimneys, there are quite a few places that it can leak at. And oftentimes we'll get calls when people start to see leaking in their ceiling, or the crown molding that they have on the walls has fallen off because the water's gotten in there. Well, that means that the water has been leaking for a long time and it hasn't been addressed. Oftentimes in our inspections, we'll get in the attic, we'll look around, we'll try to make sure that there is no rotted out wood where water's coming in. Because also, not only could the masonry issues happen to let the water in, but you have flashing that roofers will put on around that chimney. And if the flashing is bad, it can be leaking in those areas right around the chimney. So those are all things that you definitely want to look for on a masonry. Make sure that you check the flashing. You want to look at all the mortar joints. You want to look at the crown. You want to make sure that if there is no hood, is there some sort of cap on it that is preventing water from going directly down into there? All of those things can apply when it comes to actually, water leaks in a masonry. And oftentimes what I tell people is, although you're not seeing water spots in your ceiling right now, eventually with all these holes in the, mortar joints and the cracks in the crown, you will start to have water intrusion, and it will eventually find the path of least resistance, which can be your walls, or it can be your attic, or whatever it may be. Now on prefabricated units, oftentimes they have a pre-built chase that has vinyl, stucco, some sort of siding on the side of it that comes up and out of your roof there. And then on the top, you have your chimney cap, and then you have a flat metal portion that you call the chase cover. That chase cover is there so that you don't have water going directly down into the chase. And your cap is there so you don't have water going directly down into the flue pipe that will lead straight down to the top of your firebox or your fireplace, what you see on the inside of your home. And if water is going directly down into that flue pipe, it's going to eventually rust out your damper, which is the flue pipe goes all the way down right to the damper, and then right below the damper is your actual firebox that you burn the wood in. If it rusts that damper housing out, there are no replacements for dampers, and oftentimes you have to do a full fireplace change out. So now, instead of you maybe just having to get a cap or something like that costs you around $300, $400, $500, $600, $700, you're now having to spend $10,000 and to replace the entire fireplace, and you're having to cut out drywall or whatever it may be to do that, and then you have to do more construction work in the long run. So you want to make sure that you have a cap. And if you don't have a cap, throw a tarp over it and, do not use that fireplace. Now your chase covers, oftentimes you'll see that they're rusted. And if they are rusted, that means they're going to form holes eventually. And those holes can lead to water intrusion. And oftentimes I see, that whoever it was that installed these chase covers, they'll either screw or nail into the very top of them. So they may put some sealant, silicone, whatever it may be, over those nails or those screws, but over time, that silicone starts to crack away or starts to deteriorate, and now you have another area where water can get into. So that would be areas on the prefab. It's either going to come in through the flue pipe because you have no cap or the cap wasn't properly installed, or that chase cover. That chase cover is going to be rusted and have holes in it, something of that nature. So those would be areas where water can get in. But also you want to check on the siding. Sometimes you get up there and the vinyl siding has fallen off and the moisture barrier behind that vinyl siding has started to come off. Well, now you have water coming in from the actual chase itself. And then flashing, yet again, even just like the masonry, you want to make sure that you check the flashing areas of those prefabricated units because the flashing could be bad. And if the flashing is bad, then it's going to need to be replaced. So that would be areas in the actual prefabricated that could actually leak. It's just going to come from the cap area or the chase cover, the siding. Sometimes it's not as often that the siding is doing it, and the flashing, but that would be those areas. Now with masonry, like I said, those masonries are just soaking up water. So, if you have water sitting on the ground next to that masonry, it's soaking up that water. Anywhere where water is going to touch that brick chimney, it's going to soak it up. So there's a lot more leaking issues that happen with masonries compared to prefabricated units. Not saying that prefabs don't, but masonries are a lot worse usually. So that would be where you'd look for leaks.